Wizard of Oz. And here he is, the Wizard of Wiz, if ever a Wiz there was. If ever, oh, ever a Wiz there was, the Wizard of Oz is one because of the wonderful things he does.
G'day everyone, we're back, Dorothy and I, in her little Supergirl suit. She's got a new friend. Who's this? It's your Tin Man. You remember him? You helped him along the yellow brick road. Anyway, she's in a marvellous little thing. I'll just tilt it down. It's called a bumbo. Awesome little thing for containing little ones, only when they can sit upright themselves and support their heads. You wouldn't put them in smaller than this, but we just got it today, so she's very happy. Ooh, what does that taste like? Anyway, back to the point. We're here to have a review of 30 Years a Watchtower Slave. Now, this is by an ex-Jehovah's Witness by the name of William Schnell. This is one of the books that I only just came across it just very recently. Wish I'd had this book way back in the beginning when I first left. Very helpful. Insight into like first-hand accounts of a lot of what went on with Rutherford. Very interesting, I assure you. Do you ever feel like you're being watched? And so let's get into it now. Unfortunately, I did find out recently. I was on a Facebook posting, and someone had quoted from 30 Years Watchtower Slave as well, and I looked it up, and I found out that this copy that I have is an abridged version of his book. So I'm going to have to try and get a full copy of that book. But this is good. It's an abridged one, gets to the point. But I'll put the ISBN number into the notes for it, and a link to Amazon where you can get it. Anyway, William Schnell, who was he? Well, he was born in 1905 in New York, and his parents, not long after that, went back to live in Germany, and that's where he grew up. His parents weren't at the time Bible students. They just had a strong faith in God, and that's sort of their background. Now, chapter 1 of the book, he titled it, It Appeared So Harmless. Now, he first joined the Bible students in 1921, and the thing that drew him was the spiritual freedom that he could see in the congregations. There was a very positive atmosphere and at the time, but this all changed under Rutherford as he continued as the third president. He's not the second president. Got to look up William Conley, who was the first president of the Watchtower Society, then Russell, and then Rutherford. Anyway, but he says that Rutherford was a very astute student of human nature and could easily manipulate and put that into great practice. Now, this was all post-World War I, and for the Watchtower Society, people at the time were very ripe for the plucking, because their faith had been shaken by the events of World War I and the deaths and the illnesses afterwards. Chapter 2, titled Early Machinations. This is really where Rutherford's first shot of retaliation for being imprisoned is that book in 1919, The Fall of Babylon the Great, and that culminated in 1920. The millions now living will never die. But that message was electrifying to people, especially after World War I, when millions had died. So death was a pretty, fresh in everyone's mind. So to be told that, you will never die, and I mean, never. We've done another YouTube post on that about the Watchtower Exposed, how in the latest magazines they have put it to millions now living may never die was the title. So there are cosmetic changes to their history. But anyway, on page 24, here they're only going to read 2 bits out of the book. leave the rest to you to enjoy and read yourself. And it talks about that scripture that and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then the end shall come. Now, the use of that scripture by the Society gave prophetic colour and completely justified its book-selling campaign of that Millions Now Living book. Now, it says here, William says here that the clever superimposition of prophecy over the world background, which is what we have seen constantly, following the war was a master stroke if ever there was one. It followed a pattern which the Watchtower Society has used ever since with great cunning, consummate skill, and great financial and organisational success. This is the pivot upon which revolves the entire strategy of its worldwide proselytizing campaign. So early tactics were quite visible there, weren't they, right, Dorothy? Oh God, could be in character. So that advertised the king and his kingdom at Cedar Point, Ohio. You know, why didn't they use proclaim, proclaim, proclaim? Because advertising is a selling word. And focus, as he said there, the focus was on selling books, and it's to raise money. Right, chapter 3, he talks about entering Watchtower slavery, how he was a happy pioneer up until between 1921 and 1924. He pioneered and had a good time. That ended when he entered the German Bethel. He said, to quote him, "I felt a chilling change come over him." The publications were all geared, he said, around predicting the end of the world. Internal trouble from Russell, Russell's will wasn't followed by Rutherford. That was causing division, and there were constant witch hunts and things going on to sort these out. Now, the whole thing that Rutherford did by getting himself, pushing the government to basically put him in prison, that created him into a martyr, diverted attention from what was going on inside the organisation to outside, and it made him, in the view of some of them, a hero, which he maintained that ever since. He tried to, in his mind, and his followers. But, as he says there, the congregations were still autonomous, but Rutherford had 3 steps to destroy that. One was that the congregations had to accept the Watchtower's leadership. Yep. Oh, that's right. Secondly, the new books. This weeded out the individual thinking. It became organisational thinking. And thirdly, they started printing their own publications, and that's where the money started to come in. And we'll cover that in another chapter. And in 1925, that was the reporting of field service began, and that was a real cause of dissension, he said, amongst congregations. But it's funny how in the official JW history it said that it was only a small number chose to leave the organisation when Rutherford implemented all these things. But in actual fact, well, William Schnell claims, and I haven't seen the substantiated proof of it, but he claims that 3/4 of all the Bible students left between 1921 and 1931. So it's not just a small number. 3/4 is a massive amount. So anyway, that's another one of history being clouded over for modern Jehovah's Witnesses. Next, he goes into organisation in America, and this is in 1931, that new brand name for the Bible students that Rutherford picked, and he really picked that himself. The Bible, became a study reference book to be referred to from studying Watchtower books, which was the main focus, and that was the culminated up into 1938. Poor Tin Man. Go easy on him. She's almost got her teeth coming through. That's why she's got rosy cheeks and drooling like crazy. But in 1938, there was a theocracy resolution was passed that all congregations adopted, that passed their autonomy over to the Watchtower Society. So gone were the independent congregations. Now they were under the thumb of the organisation. Chapter 6 is The Judge Visits Germany. Now, this one showed that the injection of money from America into the German Bethel, and printing was a jump ahead in technology for printing, for bookbinding. This was all to exploit and trial tactics that were going to be used in America. And just by an example of how much money was being made at the time, he said that in the USA at the time, so this is 1925, the cost to produce a book for the Watchtower Society was 4 cents. They'd sell it then for 35 cents. So, you know, they're making a fair bit of profit. But in Germany, by comparison, the cost to make a book were 12 Pfennig, just like the 12 cents, and they were selling the books for a mark, like $1. So there was a very big increase. Now, if you think about, you know, procedures haven't changed back then. No one got literature for free, so you know, you had to roll up and buy it. So Germany was a very profitable one, because the witnesses who were, or the Bible students at the time, witnesses, would pay a mark for it at the congregation. They'd go out, they'd sell it for a mark, and they'd go into the coffers of the Watchtower Society. So they scored 2 marks for the outlay of 12 Pfennig. So they're making 1 mark 88 on every book. So Rutherford certainly viewed Germany for the money-making ability that they had, and the organisational trial runs before they were implemented in the United States. Chapter 7, well, that's called Sifting, and the title was Conform or Else. Now, the old-timers, the Russellites, were marginalised in the congregations, which sounds familiar, doesn't it? I was thinking about this. You think of the anointed ones, well, the ones who claim they're anointed. They've all certainly been pushed to the side, marginalised, that it's really only the faithful and discreet, the only anointed ones to be respected, and, you know, genuine are the ones on the governing body. So, you know, there's not much difference to tactics back then. They want to keep the limelight on themselves. 1925, now this is an interesting one, was the principle of disfellowshipping was started. So I know, as people say, it's, you know, it was the 1950s, 1960s, but back as early as 1925, Rutherford had that principle, and that's what William Schnell brings out. And he puts here, the inconsistency of the Watchtower Society in its arbitrary use of scriptures to suit their organisational purpose was once again glaringly shown in their interpretation of Matthew 24:45 to 52, which is the faithful and wise servant of this passage. They insisted to be a class so as to nullify previously held belief that it applied to Charles Russell. But the evil servant of the second portion of this very same scripture, they just as strongly insisted to refer to individuals, not a class. So they saying one thing's not is a class, the other, okay, darling, the other, I know, it's got a self-defense mechanism against Bible garbage. Isn't that right? Because Mummy's an ex-JW too, so both of us being apostates is destined to be in her blood. Good girl. Right, so the society was calling one a class, the individual, that's wise servant, a class, yet the evil slave was defined as individuals, not a class. So in short, he says, while the society collectively was the faithful and wise servant class, its opposers as individuals were evil servants and were so banded. This established a justifiable cause for disfellowshipping. This double standard of interpretation is in evidence throughout all the books and booklets and magazines of the Watchtower Society. So there you have it. 1925 was the beginning of the principles that they were used to marginalise and to label as evil any person who cared to digress from or to go along with their flip-flopping doctrines. So anyway, there you go. That's a little history point. Chapter 8 was about, it's called God's Organisation. This recounts the German Bethel director and the things that went through. And the thing that stood out for him was the use, the Bethel director used a word called cadaver cahorum, which is actually a German military term. And William Schnell said that shocked him, and a lot of others left because of it, because that's a military term meaning corpse-like obedience, to blind obedience to the organisation, and that's what they were trying to do. There was just a strict full adherence to what the organisation said. So he says no financial reports were ever made public. That kept that image, even though, as he pointed out, that every book that was sold, the Watchtower Society was almost making 2 marks. That's all right. Okay. They wanted to give the appearance that they were a financially poor organisation, and boy, they have done that. Barbara Anderson, I was listening to an interview of hers the other day, and she said, look, up until, after 1975, yes, the Society did hit a financial bit of a crisis, but they've dug themselves out of it, obviously, with the billions that they have now. But they really do try and give an air of being a poor organisation. Now, all these things that happened there, that account pushed this William Schnell to leave the German Bethel, and luckily for him, he returned to America in 1927, but he could sense the coming onslaught of nationalism in Germany. Okay, thank you. That's good. All right, chapter 11, Doctrinal Gyrations. He runs through a lot of the doctrinal flip-flops that he saw between in his time between the 1920s and the 1950s. Chapter 13, Upheld by the Courts. Rutherford charged that religion is a snare and a racket. Well, he knew it better than anyone that it was a racket, because he was running one. And this diverted attention by using persecution as a brand mark to say that they had the truth as opposed to the rest of Christendom. Chapter 17, jumping through the Theocracy of 1938. There were 3 tiers of the Society, being the first was Russell. What happened at the end of Russell's time, his will, which Rutherford didn't follow, certainly showed to Rutherford that he needed to settle any future dispute of authority by establishing the grounds for a governing body, which is a creation. It's not mentioned in the Bible anywhere. It's purely a fabrication of a power-hungry megalomaniac. He was. Oh my. I love you. Anyway, she's funny. So, chapter 19, Establishing a Worldwide Theocracy. Well, the average JW now has minimal Bible knowledge as opposed to the very first early Bible students. And even back then, the Bible knowledge was very short, and this was proved by the young fellows who are getting called up for service for World War II to be conscripted, and they tried to use religion, and they had a very poor knowledge of the Bible. So the Theocratic Ministry School was introduced to provide that unified education that they could all be sounding like the little robots that they became. Chapter 21, Freedom. This was the beginning of the end for him. He was disfellowshipped for selling his own book lines, which was opposition to the Watchtower Society. So it was trumped up charges, but he was glad to be out of it. And apparently I tried to find on the internet when he died, but it seems around, it was the early 1980s. So I might need to look that up. But the last chapter, 23, is some good advice, and it's titled When They Come to Your Door. It's a great read for some thought-provoking questions to ask Jehovah's Witnesses when they knock on the door. So all in all, but anyway, all in all, I think it's recommended to you to read. It's a good read. There's nothing like accounts of these events from contemporaries who were there. No overlapping generations of people remembering. He lived it, saw it, and knew the individuals. So that's a good one to read. 30 Years a Watchtower Slave. I'll put the details in the comments below. Right, so thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoy that book. We've got a whole stack. I'm going crazy. I'm buying heaps of books. So we'll work our way through. I'm reading Stephen Hassan's book, which is not combating cult mind control, but it's his new one. And it's just slipped my brain. But anyway, it's a great one. That'll come up. So we'll do that one next. All right, Dorothy, it's time to say goodbye to everyone. Go over at the camera, over here. Like dogs, they look at where you point. All right, so see you later. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you around. Bye-bye.
I regret to announce this is the end. I'm going now. I bid you all a very fond farewell.